Jai Mataji, everyone. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you to the ongoing series on education for a new consciousness. Today, we'll be talking about the vital, the features of the vital, and the power of the vital. Before we do a deep dive into the content, I'd like you to first think about an accomplishment that you are extremely proud of and reflect on the fuel that made it possible for you to achieve it. Now, at the same time, I also want you to think about another goal that you had in your life for which you had an extreme desire and emotion to achieve it, but you weren't able to achieve that goal. And as we go through the content, I'd like you to reflect back on your personal experiences and see how the vital came into play in your personal life. So to start off with, what is the vital? The answer is very simple. The vital is the energy that makes things happen. It is what you would think of as the source of all emotions, feelings, desires, and impulses. And if it is extremely strong, it can be used to accomplish magnificent things. And let's learn from Dhruv, who we all know as the young boy who achieved great things at the age of 5. You see, Dhruv was made to feel that he didn't deserve his father's love. And because of that, he achieved what many cannot even today. Now let's look at his life story a little bit closer. So Dhruv was the son of Uttanapad, and Uttanapad had 2 wives, Suruchi and Suniti. Now Suruchi was very dear to the king, and because of this, the king listened to her. Now Dhruv was the son of Suniti, and the king did not acknowledge Suniti at all. Now there was one day Dhruv saw his brother, who was Suruchi's son, sitting on his father's lap. And Dhruv also wanted to sit on his father's lap. So he quickly ran. And right when he went to do that, Suruchi told him right away that even though the king is your father, you're not qualified to sit on his lap because you were not born from me. Now these harsh words stung little Dhruv. And on top of that, he looked at his father and his father didn't speak up. Now this made him really angry. So, as one would expect, he started crying and then he ran to his mother immediately. So he told his mother what happened and she felt extreme pain for her son. Now unfortunately, she didn't have any solution because the king only listened to Suruchi. But one thing made sense to her at the time, and so she told her son, "If you want your father's throne, ask God for it." That was a perfect answer for Dhruv. And so he left his house in the search of God. Now on the way, he met Sage Narad, who tested his ambition. And so Sage Narad told him that the path ahead would be extremely difficult. And so with that, he told Dhruv to return. But Dhruv was determined, and nothing could stop him because he was pierced by those harsh words. And the only thing that he wanted was his father's throne. Now, when Narad saw his ambition, he gave him exactly what Dhruv needed. He told Dhruv how to find God. And so Dhruv continued going into the forest, and he practiced these instructions for 5 months. And after 5 months, God appeared in front of him and blessed him with exactly what he had desired for. You see, Dhruv was able to achieve this goal because he had an extremely strong vital. He had an emotion of anger, and part of his emotion had come from the fact that he felt that he was treated unfairly. That created a desire to get his father's throne. Now, all of this is what is seated in the vital. So, if you want to use this as a fuel to accomplish things in life, it must be developed, it must be purified, and it must be controlled. Now, if we reflect on Dhruv's situation, one can think right away that if you put anyone through such injustice, then it is extremely natural that they are going to fight for their justice. And, that is what drives them to get there forward. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. To understand this further, we need to first learn a little bit more about how the vital works. So let's learn from this example. You see, there was this young girl who absolutely loved dancing, and she dreamt of becoming a professional dancer when she was older. Now, every time she would dance on stage, the crowd would love her dancing and they would stand up and clap for her. This continued for months and months. But then there was one day, she finished her performance and no one clapped. Now, experiencing this, she was so disappointed that she never wanted to dance again in her life. You see, what had started out as a passion for dancing got converted into an activity to impress others. And this is a challenge with the vital because it seeks satisfaction. And when that satisfaction isn't there, it will refuse to act. This is exactly why the girl wanted to stop, even though she had a passion to dance. So, if we want to make sure that we can continue working towards the goal, then one must first learn to understand what is the source of satisfaction and then be able to address it. Now, another feature of the vital is that it can become inactive very easily. There's a story of this girl who dreamt of writing a book, and she went around telling everybody that one day she was going to write this book. So everyone believed in her dream. When you take a closer look at the life she lived, she had the same routine. She would wake up, she would have breakfast, she would go to work, she would come home, she would eat dinner, and then she would go to sleep. And she lived this routine for years. And never once did she change her routine to make more time to write her book. Now, after many years passed by, this book only stayed in her imagination. You see, the vital energy that is needed to accomplish things dislikes a monotonous and dull life. So everyone has to be careful that this isn't happening to them. Now, moving on to the next question. Well then, what does the vital actually like? And the answer is also very simple to that. The vital likes anything that is extreme. It can be an extreme emotion, it can be an extreme desire for something. It always wants to be in an environment that gives this feeling of extreme. And it doesn't matter whether this environment is good or bad. Because all the vital will do is it will try to mimic the environment. So what environment the children are being placed around is extremely important. If we take a look at examples from history, we've heard of Paul McCartney, and he was a famous musician with the Beatles. Now his son, James McCartney, also followed his father's footsteps. Now similarly, we've also heard of many parents who are alcoholic, and when the children grow up, they become alcoholic just like their parents because that's the environment that they grew up in. You see, in both cases, the vital will do anything it can to mimic the environment, and it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. And so that's exactly why it's important for one to be able to understand what is right from wrong and then subject themselves to the environment that they want the vital to mimic. Once they have the understanding of this, what they really need to be able to do is understand the power in controlling the vital. We've all heard of Alexander the Great. Now, when Alexander the Great was a boy, his father had received this horse. The horse was known as this untamable horse that just kicked everybody who tried to tame it. And that was then one time when Alexander stepped forward and he said he could do this. Everybody laughed at him, but his father gave him one chance. Now, when Alexander looked at the horse very closely, he noticed that the horse was afraid of its own shadow. And just because of that, he turned the horse towards the sun, he mounted on it, and then he gently guided it, and that's how he tamed the horse. Everyone was amazed because that horse that was wild had become calm. This was the famous horse Bucephalus, and it carried Alexander through many battles. And now this is the same goal that each one of us has to work towards. Just like Alexander tamed the horse, each one of us needs to implement steps to purify and educate the vital and be able to control it to achieve the goal. And now it's never too late to start this training, but you must make sure you prioritize this for yourself and for your children. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in today. And in the next week, we'll go deeper into training of the vital Today, we summarize what the vital is, what are features of the vital, how it starts mimicking the environment, what it doesn't like, and what causes it to become inactive. Until then, take care everyone. Until next time. Jai Mataji.